Many times the block symbology that we insert into construction drawings is 2D in nature. So things like street signs, vehicles, and trees look a lot like what we see on screen. And this is perfectly fine, but wouldn't it be nice if these symbols could take on a 3D appearance if they were viewed from a three-dimensional perspective? Well, if the symbols are multi-view blocks, they can. Let's take a look. I'm going to change my point of view by clicking a hotspot here on the view cube. And you can see as soon as my perspective changes, the blocks recognize that and they are now appearing in a three-dimensional state. In fact, I can make this look even better by opening the In-Canvas menu. Let me open up the one here for visual styles and I'll choose Realistic. Then we'll zoom in. In fact, we can make it look even better. I can adjust the properties of this visual style to hide these edges. I'll do that by opening the In-Canvas menu again. I'll come down to Visual Styles Manager. I'll select the realistic visual style, and then down below under properties, I'll choose this show property under edge settings and I'll change this to none, and then I'll close the palette. So you can see by using multi-view blocks, just by changing your point of view, the appearance of the block can change. Now let's look at how we can find and insert multi-view blocks into a Civil 3D drawing. I'm going to split the screen. Let me open the menu here on the left side, and under Viewport Configuration List, I'll choose to vertical. Then in this view on the right, we'll keep this in a realistic view. We'll zoom in. And then I'll click in the view on the left. Let's go back to a top view. Another way we can change views is by using the menu in the middle. I'll select top, and then I'll zoom out. We'll pan it over, and I'll change the visual style in this view to 2D wireframe, since we're viewing this from a top view. To access multi-view blocks, I'm going to bring up the tool palette. I'll do that by pressing Control 3. And when the tool palette is opened in Civil 3D, it defaults to the subassembly parts that we use in corridors. To find the multi-view blocks, you'll right-click on this name bar, and in the menu, come down and choose Civil Multi-View Blocks. You'll use this same workflow to put the palette back, such that you're viewing your Imperial subassemblies. On the Multi-View Blocks palette, we have 4 tabs containing a large collection of symbols. The Highways tab contains symbols that you would use for a transportation project. Here we have vehicles, street lighting, signage, as well as a few other things. On the External Works tab are symbols that you might use for a site plan. Here we have playground equipment, people, park benches, things like that. The Landscape tab contains just that. This is where we can find a collection of trees and shrubs. And then the Building Footprints tab contains a collection of Monopoly-style building placeholders. To insert a multi-view block, we're going to do it just like we insert a standard block. I'm going to go to the External Works tab, and I'll drag this down towards the bottom. I'd like to insert a fire hydrant. I'll do that by selecting the icon, and then I will click to place this in the drawing. If I zoom in, you can see it looks just like a traditional block. Let me drag the palette over. And you can see that since this is a multi-view block, it's smart enough to know how it's being viewed. So from a three-dimensional perspective, we are seeing a three-dimensional symbol. Let me go back to my top view and we'll insert a couple more symbols. I'm going to drag this up and we'll insert a park bench. I'll click to place it in the drawing. I'll give it a little rotation angle. And then let's insert a phone booth. We'll take this red one. I'll drop it right here. Apply a little rotation. Let's close the palette here for a second just to free up some screen space. If I zoom out, you can see that these symbols are coming in a little bit small. Well, that's because some of the symbols in the multi-view block collection are designed for metric use. Not a problem. Since they're blocks, we can easily scale them. One way to do it is by selecting the symbols. We can go over to the Properties palette. I have mine anchored to the interface. Let me drag down here to the Geometry section, and I'll change this from a scale of 1 to 3.28. Basically, I'm converting from meters to feet. I'm going to copy this value, and I'll use Control V to paste it to the other locations. And you can see now those objects are properly scaled for this drawing. Now, if you'd like to make a more permanent adjustment to the scales, let me press Control 3 to bring the palette back. If you right-click on the symbols here and come down to Properties, right here in the Command setting, we can see the script that's used to insert this object. And right down here at the end, this number represents the scale. So if I change this to 3.28, it will always be inserted at the proper size. Note that we are actually inserting a DWG file. So if you wanted to get in and reverse engineer some of these symbols, let me show you where you can find these drawings. I'll close the dialog box in this palette, and then I'll press Control 2 to bring up Design Center. And I have saved the multi-view block location here as a favorite place. Let me double click to access that. You can find the multi-view blocks within the Program Data folder under Autodesk, under C3D 2014, ENU, Data, Symbols, MV Blocks. Right here is the collection of drawings that you can investigate, get in and experiment with if you want to make some changes to these objects. Now that we have an idea of how multi-view blocks work, let's look at an example of how they can be used in a Civil 3D drawing. I'm going to select this other file tab to flip over to my survey file. This drawing represents a topographic view of a rural intersection. Let's zoom in. Right here I have a Kogo point. This Kogo point is special because it utilizes a multi-view block for the symbol. Generally speaking, that multi-view block was inserted into the drawing from the palette. It was then applied as a point marker style. Let's split the screen and take a look. I'm going to open the viewports menu here again, and I have a saved viewport that focuses on the stop sign. If I click this Kogo point, I'll hover over the grip and go to Rotate Marker. You can see that I'm adjusting this symbol in both 2D and 3D. So utilizing this technique, all of the survey data that you insert into a drawing is automatically participating in a future visualization. Let me select this Kogo point and we'll put the rotation back to its original location. Let's adjust the view again. I'm going to back up. I've created another saved view for this. Let's reload split screen. This gives us a larger view of the intersection. In this example, let's say I'd like to flesh out my visualization by inserting some vehicles. I'll press Ctrl 3 to bring back the multi-view palettes. I'm going to go to the Highways tab. I'll select this Mini Cooper. I'll click to place it in the drawing, adjust its rotation angle to match the lane. In fact, we'll drag this down. We'll insert another car. Let's select the Mercedes. I'll place that in this lane. We'll make sure that he's driving in the right direction. These two cars should show up in this view. Now, why don't they show up now? Well, when I inserted these symbols, they were placed at elevation 0, this is the elevation that I clicked on screen. To raise these to the surface elevation, I'm going to select the surface, and then in the contextual ribbon, I'll open the Surface Tools panel and I'll choose Move Blocks to Surface. Using this dialog box, I can select my blocks by name. If I select the name here, it will raise every block with this name to the surface elevation. If I wanted to raise individual blocks only, I can use the icon over here on the right. I'm going to hold the Shift key and I'll select both of the blocks by name, and then I'll click OK to raise them to the surface elevation. When I'm finished, I'll press Escape to deselect the surface, and then we can close this palette. Now, we use this technique with vehicles, but we could do it with any of the symbols available on the multi-view block palette. As you can see, by incorporating multi-view blocks into a design, you can easily transition from standard construction drawings to a 3D visualization by simply changing your point of view.